Leather glove, no sequins. Yeah, buckles on the jacket, it's a leash.
Hey guys, welcome to the Dancing Brows filter tutorial. First of all, I want to say thanks for the massively overwhelming response on the Spark AR community page. I couldn't believe such a fantastic response from you guys, so I really appreciate that. Obviously, I've been flooded with requests for tutorials on there, so here it is. Here's the tutorial for that filter. Now, this is my first tutorial, so I do apologise if it's a little bit rough and ready around the edges. And having said that, like if there's any suggestions you could make for me making this either filter or this tutorial better, please let me know, because hopefully I'll be making some more tutorials, and I'd love to be improving on that as we go. Okay, so how the filter fundamentally works is two parts. The first part is blanking out the face, so taking a single texture that we can cover the whole face with that adapts as you move your head around. Then isolating that texture to just the eyebrows to keep them hidden. And then we're going to be taking that texture of the eyebrows on two separate layers that we can be animating up and down to the beat of the music using the audio analyzer patch. So it's going to be quite a long tutorial, but hopefully it's going to be pretty easy to follow. I might go quite quickly, but if you just follow along in the patch editor as I have in mind, then you should be fine. Okay, so we're going to jump straight into the patch editor, and we're going to be starting with the section of the filter that blanks out the face and then covers up the eyebrows. So the first thing we're going to be doing is creating a 2D transform pack. So I'm going to make a 2D transform pack, and we're going to change a couple of the values here in order to get this to work. So we're going to change the x coordinate of the translation to -8, and the y to -4, and then the scale is just going to be 18 for the x and 20 for the y, and then you're going to leave the other three values the same. From there, we're going to go into a texture transform node, and the output of the 2D transform pack is just going to go into the transform input on the texture transform. And then from the texture transform, we're going to go into a texture sampler. And this is going to go from the texture output to the texture input. And we're going to set the UV to 0.5 in both those values on that node. From there, we're going to go into a mix node. And we're just going to be using the second input there, as we're going to be using the first in this next section. And for the next section, we're going to be making a value node. And that value is going to be 0.9. We're going to be making a pack node. And we're going to be making sure that this is a vector 4 pack. And the final vector there is going to be 1. And then every other input is going to be populated using our value node. So you should have 0.9 on everything and then 1 at the bottom there. We're then going to add a multiply node. And the top input is going to be using our pack. And then we're going to take the texture sampler and add that to the bottom input on our multiply node. And then I'm going to take the output of multiply into the top input of our mix node here. Okay, it's looking pretty good so far. The next section is going to be to add a second texture sampler. Oh. And with this texture sampler, we're going to leave everything as it is, and we're going to add a vertex attribute node. And all you got to do is make sure that this is texture coordinates in the dropdown. And I'm going to drag that into texture there, into UV there, sorry, make sure that's in UV. And then from here, we're just going to drag out to another mix node. And you're just going to make sure that that's actually going into the second input there. And from the first mix node into the top input on the second mix node. And then last but not least here, we're going to add an SDF ellipse. Oh, there we are. An SDF ellipse node. And we're going to change the values in here. Leave the center at 0.5 and 0.5, but we're going to change half size to 0.25 and 0.25. And from here, we're going to go into a smooth step, just into the top input of the smooth step. And then the smooth step is going to go out into the bottom input of our final mix node. So this is our calculations, and basically what this is doing is it's going to be taking an average color from a texture input. We're going to give it in a second, and then outputting that as outputting to a face mesh. So in order to do that, I'm going to highlight all of the nodes I've just created, right click and click group. And I'm going to rename this face cover or anything along those lines. But this is looking a bit well, nondescript at the moment. So what I'm going to do is right click and click group properties. And we're going to add a couple of inputs and an output so that we can actually start to add some data in here. So I'm going to add 2 inputs and 1 output. The first input I'm going to call texture, and I'm going to change the type to a texture. The second input I'm going to call edge max. Leave the settings within that as they are, and then the output I'm just going to call texture out or text out. Will do the job. And again, we're going to leave that completely as it is. And if we double click back on this face cover now, you'll see it's actually created some new nodes inside a group. So I'm going to take this yellow output and just bring the output of the mix into the output there. I'm going to take the edge max down to the bottom right here and take that into the edge max of our smooth step. And then for texture, we're just going to input to the texture sampler here, and we're going to input to the texture transform texture input here. So that's looking pretty good, and I think that's all going to work correctly, but we'll test that now. So I'm going to go back to the main section here, and you'll see I have our face cover here, but we need a texture to go into that now. That's going to be our face extraction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a face tracker, and under texture extraction on the right hand side, I'm just going to click the little plus, and you'll see down in your assets panel on the left hand side that you now have a face tracker texture. I'm just going to drag that onto my node graph, and from the RGBA output, I'm going to drag that into the texture. And then I'm going to create a face mesh, and I'm going to add that inside our face tracker so that it tracks the face. I'm going to add a material to it. And then inside the material properties, I'm just going to first of all rename it to face cover material. I'm going to set the type to a flat material. And I'm just going to click on the little gold arrow next to texture here, and I'm going to drag from the text out that I've created into the yellow texture here. And you'll see it's created like a flat, small circle of blurred texture on my face now. So I'm going to change the edge max value to maybe something like 0.3 maybe, or could even go 0.2 probably. Yeah, 0.2 is looking good. So 0.2 now is keeping my face nice and covered, but of course we want a bit more than that, and we only want to isolate the eyebrow section. So what I'm going to do is use an alpha map for that. So I'm going to open up Photoshop, and I've already brought the face textures in here, but I'll leave a link to those in the description below, so that you guys can grab those too. And I'm going to create 3 more layers in my Photoshop. We probably don't need the face mesh here, so I'm actually going to delete that. And I'm going to create 3 more layers. Okay, we're going to call the first layer eyebrow hider. We're going to call the second layer left brow, and then the third layer we're going to call right brow. Whoops, I did right brow. And all I'm going to do is take a brush on eyebrow hider. Make sure you've got the eyebrow hider layer selected. I'm going to set the hardness to 0 and change the size so it's about just a little bit bigger than the eyebrow. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to paint over the eyebrows. Just give that a nice covering until you can't see the eyebrow anymore. And that should be about right. But what you can do as well is take your opacity down and just add like a little soft dusting around the edges. The more kind of soft you can get around the edges, the better the blend will be when we go back into Spark AR. I'm just going to quickly hit Command J on that layer to duplicate that. I'm going to go to my properties, which is here, and click this little mirror icon. just to flip that over, and I'm going to drag that over to the other eyebrow. And we'll try and keep it, using the guides, we'll keep it pretty central. And then with that layer, I'm just going to merge that with the layer below. So we have one layer, which is our eyebrow hider. And I'm going to hide the background layer, and I'm now going to save that as a PNG file. Save as, let's go to, let's go back and try. So I'm going to make sure I select PNG file there, and I'm going to call that brow hider. Browhider.png, and I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to go back into Spark AR. I'm just going to go into my face cover material. And on the right hand side, you'll see there's a grayed out section that says alpha. I'm just going to select that, the little box next to that. I'm going to click choose a file, and I'm going to navigate to where my brow hider PNG is located. And you'll see that when I bring that in, it actually covers only my eyebrows with that texture. I've got a bit of weird lighting going on here, so it's not going to work that great, but on even lighting, that's going to work really nicely just to keep those eyebrows hidden. Okay, so the next step is going to be to create those new eyebrows that we can move up and down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new face mesh. I'm going to make sure this is under the same face tracker. I should have named my first face mesh really. Just going to rename that one face color. And the new one I'm going to rename right brow, right eyebrow, whatever, or any other feature that you're trying to remove. And I'm just going to, with the texture, I'm going to use that new material and create a new material. Create a new material. Again, we're going to go here and rename that to be right brow material. Right, I can't type today. Material. Again, we're going to change it to a flat material. And for the material texture, we're just going to use the face tracker texture. So you'll see that it just covers the face back again. Now I'm going to duplicate this face mesh and rename it left eyebrow. And within that, I'm going to duplicate the right brow material as well. I'm going to rename it left brow material. And in left brow material, we're also going to be using the face tracker texture. So you should end up with just seeing your own face back in the window again. But again, we need to isolate just those eyebrows. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop. And for our eyebrows themselves, I'm going to delete this eyebrow hider layer. And for the left brow, again, we're going to be painting over the eyebrow, but it needs to be larger than the eyebrow hider, because otherwise you get a weird seam around the edge. So I'm just going to start painting that on. Oh, whoops. Make sure your opacity is back to 100%. I'm going to start painting that on, making sure it's a little bit bigger, just taking up a little bit more space. Try not to go over the eye. And then I'm going to duplicate that, go into my properties, reverse it as I did before, and drag that over to the right. Just making sure that's aligned nicely. As soon as it tells me it's central. That's not very central, is it? Like that. And then I'm just going to rename that layer to be right brow now, actually. And I'm going to hide the right brow, hide the background, and save this one as leftbrow.png. Make sure it's a PNG file. And then hide the left brow, show the right brow, and save that as rightbrow.png. So the two separate eyebrows. And when we go back into Spark AR after creating those, if we just click on our right eyebrow material and click alpha, we're just going to navigate to our right brow and click OK. And then if we go into our left brow material and click alpha, we're just going to navigate to our left brow. And what you'll see in the 3D view here is I've got two floating eyebrows here, but my eyebrows still look normal in the face view. And there's a little bit of weirdness going on, but in most lighting that doesn't actually happen. simply because I've got quite a harsh light on me right now. So there we have it. We have the eyebrows isolated, and if you can see that if I move them around, I can move them on the face, and they will be hidden underneath the eyebrow. Okay, so part 2 is going to be getting those eyebrows we've just created to react to the sound. And this is actually the much simpler section. It's pretty easy breezy from here. So step 1 is going to be adding our microphone into the patch editor. So I'm just going to drag the microphone down, and you can use Instagram Music for this, or you can use a variety of other. You can use music from the filter, from the library, sorry. But I like to use a microphone because I feel it's more versatile, letting people use sounds that are around them. Although an Instagram Music option is probably a good idea, and I might actually do that as well. From here, we're going to create the audio analyzer filter. Node, and I'm just going to drag from audio to audio, microphone into audio analyzer. And I'm also going to add a speaker as well, I think. I'm just going to add a speaker, which I'm going to drag. And I'm just going to add and after I've added a speaker, I'm just going to go into audio and click the little golden yellow triangle arrow next to that. And we're just going to have that as our output from the audio analyzer as well, so that the sound can still be heard in the filter. Now this took a lot of trial and error to get the right frequencies to work with most music, and it still doesn't work with all music. So you can have a play with this yourself. Just keep sending it to your phone, testing it, sending it to your phone, testing it. Obviously the louder the music the better, but yeah, these are the settings I ended up with, but I encourage you to experiment with this. So from band 2 here, we're going to come out to a greater than. Oh, that's a greater than it. Oh, hang on. Band 2 to a greater than. From the greater than, we're going to go into a pulse. From a pulse turned on, we're going to go into an animation. Like this. Oh. We're going to go into animation, and from the animation we're going to go into a transition, and we're going to leave this actually as it is, and then all we're going to do is take the position of our left brow. So I'm going to go and click left brow face tracker, left brow face mesh, sorry, and create a position node, and just going to move that into the 3D position input. And then we're going to set the animation, because this is how the animation is going to work. Actually, last but not least, out of the greater than, we're just going to go into a delay. And from the delay, we're going to go into a reverse in the animation, which it doesn't seem to like. I guess I need to add a pulse in there. Pulse. Yeah. From the delay, we're going to go into a pulse and then into a reverse. And then we're going to set the specific details for this animation. So what worked really well for me was doing greater than 0.4. But again, I encourage you to experiment with this. The duration of the animation, and the animation is going to be the up animation of the eyebrow. I found 0.06 works well, but obviously, 0.06 works well, but anything that you do that's more than that, the animation will be longer. But then that for me started messing with the beats of the music, and it was falling out of sync a lot quicker. And then also in the delay, we're going to add a 0.06. It took me a while to figure out how to get the eyebrow to come down again after it had animated up, and I found the delay into a reverse worked really well, because it just means it takes about 0.1 second overall. Actually, not even that. Yeah, about 0.1 second overall for the eyebrow to go up and come down again, which I think looks quite good, and it's quite natural to people moving their eyebrows up and down. And then was to play. I wanted to play with actually how far the eyebrow went up. So what I ended up doing in order to do this was pausing my face, making sure I was looking at the camera, deleting the left eyebrow 3D position, and then just moving the eyebrow up to a position that I thought looked good on the face. So here, and then what I did was I took the position data from each of those, copied it into the relative end position on my transition node, like this. And then I just added my node, not my visible node, sorry. Then I just added my position back in, and then relinked that up. And when you hit play, the eyebrow stays tracked again. But just when we get that input on band 2 higher than 0.4, it just initiates the animation. So that's the basic animation for the left eyebrow. And for the right eyebrow, I actually found that the best way to do it was from this one here, band 5. We're going to go into a greater than as before. And this time it's going to be a greater than 0.3. I struggled to get this eyebrow to move as much. So 0.3 was what we went with. Into a pulse. And another one coming out of there for the delay. And the delay into a pulse. And then again, an animation node. So this turned on into the reverse, and the top turned on into the play, and into a transition. Whoops. Progress to progress. And then again, likewise, I'm just going to pause the camera and I'm looking directly at it. Take the right eyebrow and move it up to the position I want it to be. And then I'm just going to copy those bits of data. Now make sure you do a Command A or Control A when you copy this. I was having a few problems. The same when you add it into the delete as well. Just Command A, backspace, and then paste. And then you don't get any problems copying the data across, which is what I was having. Which I can already see is happened here. Command A, Command C, and then paste that into there. And then likewise, we're just going to take the position node for the right eyebrow and then attach that in there. And I'll press play again here. And there we have it. Just a quick note from me as the editor here. I just noticed I completely fucked up. So just make sure when you do this that you put the same numbers from the first eyebrow into the second eyebrow in the audio analyzer. So the duration to 0.06 and the duration of the delay to 0.06. Otherwise, this will not work. Okay, thanks. That would now be a completely functioning filter. Now obviously it's difficult to test because I don't have a microphone input into Spark AR. But I suggest at this point just sending it to Instagram and seeing if it works. Now it does tend to only work when the video starts recording. So if anyone has any ideas about how to make it work just when you're looking at it in the camera, that'd be really helpful. But for the most part, it's quite a simple filter to actually put together. And you can use this technique to change any part of the face really. You can move the eyes around with music. You can move all the features around with music. There's definitely a lot of interesting applications that you can have for this. But yeah, I'll leave the node graph here so people can see what that is. But yeah, let me know if this was helpful. Let me know if you're interested in more tutorials on any parts of Spark AR. And let me know if this is the shit way to do this and you can easily see loads of mistakes I've made and how I can improve. And that'd be really helpful as well. So thanks guys, thanks for your support, and have fun making some filters.